Okay, now there's a very interesting story that actually happened to me. I was at a friend's house in America, and this person had converted to Islam, and his mother, who had not converted to Islam, was serving us breakfast. And then she said, you know what was really a bummer for a while after my son, converted to Islam, and for a while, which means they've kind of reconciled now and they are, alhamdulillah, on good terms. And I said, what? She said, well, because all his friends, ever since he was younger, I'm used to whoever's a friend of my son's, I would hug that person, hello, and she has no sexual intentions there. She said, that really sucks. I couldn't say hi to them. And then she said, and then I realized that the love I wanted to send across to them could go across metaphysically, and I didn't have to physically observe that. And I realized that, if you have another reason, another wisdom, behind your abstaining from physical contact, that doesn't prevent me from sending my love to you. So do you see my point? What I'm trying to say with this analogy is that there's a certain amount of sincerity that needs to be within you while you outwardly abstain from, for example, what you call, Shadi, the handshake, or whatever it is. Otherwise, it's going to come across condescending again.
I'd just like to add one point to it, specifically to this example, since Shadi brought it up, and it's interesting, and it's really good, and I think I'm just presenting the other argument.
Okay.
And if you guys were to say we shouldn't be handshaking, then I would probably come with the opposite argument in that case. I'm saying it's not like this is coming out of nowhere for Western culture. I was raised, my parents told me, only shake a woman's hand if she puts out her hand first. So it's obviously in the culture. That maybe you could say that's a little outdated. I don't think it is, actually. I think that is still the proper etiquette. If you ask Miss Manners, that was what she would say. And
even if it is, just to not interrupt you, but real quick, even if it is, but at a point that understanding existed.
Yeah, exactly. So it's in the culture. I mean.
Okay, I see. Well, that's very interesting.
I think at the same time, I think this points to the larger problem of Muslim integration in the West, and particularly in Europe, with all the problems we have between, immigrants and then native Europeans, so to speak, that we really have to. I think there has to be give and take on both sides, that Muslims who do move to the West have to be willing to, I don't want to say compromise, but be more flexible with their understanding of certain things. For example, if you read like a tourist guidebook for Egypt, it'll say that for non-Arabs and non-Muslims coming to Egypt, you should dress in a way that's respectful of Egyptian culture, tradition, and religion. And I think there's accepted norms and cultural practices which have to be respected. Similarly, if a Muslim is moving to the West or deciding to live in the West, there should be a certain willingness to accept certain cultural norms that are central to American identity, for example, like the handshake.
Right, but I mean, is it central to an American identity to the point where if you didn't do it, you'd be offending them, or is it just to the point where, okay, well, you're not American, we appreciate that, and so you don't have to do that particular point? Because I think it's about the level, the abstinence from the act. I think it's about the level of how offensive the abstinence is to the culture. I don't think a woman walking around, almost nude in Cairo, I don't think a man not shaking a woman's hand in corporate America is half, if not even 10% as offensive as a woman, to America, as a woman would be walking around naked in the streets of Cairo, to Koreans.
Right. Well, let's just say that I think it's hard to essentialize 300 million people who are coming from not just dozens, but like, however you say, maybe hundreds or 100.
And when you say 300 million, although Cairo's population in Egypt is increasing, I know you mean America. Go on.
Right, that's what I mean. Sorry. Now, maybe you could make smaller divisions and say the corporate America has rules. And when you enter in, you agree to play by those rules. And then we could say, or someone could say, well then perhaps if these rules, and it has to be determined, if we can't play by these rules, then we should just not enter in, or we should develop a different definition of corporate America, whatever it may be.
Right, right.
But to say these are American values is very difficult.
Right.
So you're saying it doesn't necessarily represent the entirety of the nation.
Yeah. Well, let me give another example, which might be, I think, more relevant to the audience. Is that, I mean, there's some Muslims who don't listen to music, for example, and I think that when you're talking to Americans, and whether it's at work or school, you should know who the Beatles are. You should know who Led Zeppelin is. Otherwise, you won't be seen as one of them. You won't be seen as a...
Sorry, did Led Zeppelin sing Stairway to Paradise? Oh, I mean Stairway to Heaven. I'm not selling my show. Just kidding. Go on. But you're saying that you should know the actual the culture.
You should know the culture, and that means knowing what brings Americans together, what brings Europeans together. Is a certain appreciation for a certain cultural history, almost.
But see, again, there's a distinction that needs to be made here, I think, in my opinion. For example, in 3 of the 4 schools of thought in Islam in terms of sacred law and fiqh, there are certain restrictions to dealing with the excretions of a dog. In one of the 4 schools, which is namely the Maliki school, those limitations are a lot less intense, and so there can be a lot more dealing with the excretions of a dog's saliva, etc. Now that is already within Sharia. So when something, because the way I'm taking your advice, for me to understand it positively is, although you're not a Maliki, i.e. you're not one who follows Imam Malik's opinion regarding, for example, the non-impurity of a dog's saliva, so you follow the other schools of thought. I don't want to get too technical here, but it's very important. Appreciate that in Islam there is room for this understanding. You can have a dog at home in Islam as a Muslim based on one of the 4 schools of thought. Bearing that in mind, when you speak to Americans, where a dog is almost part of the identity of the average American home, present Islam in a way that embraces their lifestyle. Exactly. In that sense, I totally agree with you. But what if something is completely outside the fold of Islam? Like, for example, as Matthew brought up earlier, I think, possibly in discussion or maybe on the set, about dancing. For example, certain parts of, whatever, corporate America, or certain part of this or that America, if a woman asks you to dance, or if a man asks a woman to dance, she says, no, it could be offensive. And it's like, hey, what, you thought I had sexual intentions? I just wanted to do this nice little charade, this thing we do in society. That's not available in any of the 4 schools of thought. It's at that point that I think that if you abstain sincerely, with love, without a holier-than-thou feeling, with intentions like, may Allah allow this person to see the wisdom behind this sacred law. May he realize that although he had no intentions in touching me, the Muslimah can say to herself, bad intentions. May he realize the greater reason behind which Allah still made that prohibited, although some people can do it with good intentions. May he realize all these things. I think only when these intentions are realized and experienced that Muslims will truly be able to integrate. To the point that we continue presenting these things that we abstain from with holier-than-thou ahwal, with holier-than-thou states, feeling holier-than-thou, integration is a no-no. I mean, it's not just an impossibility.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain things that Muslims obviously are not going to feel comfortable doing, such as like going to happy hour and grabbing a drink at a bar. Well, yeah, so I agree with you 100% that there are certain limits for Muslims who want to keep on observing their religion in the West.
Interesting, and we should take this after the break, inshallah. I do want to say that, again, there's a distinction between what a Muslim is comfortable with and what a Muslim is allowed to and not allowed to do, because Shady brought up a beautiful point, but I did want to look at the word comfortable. Something could be disallowed and prohibited, but I could be comfortable with it. I know people who were comfortable drinking, but they were Muslims and they knew it was disallowed. But he meant the greater point of, as a Muslim, I don't appreciate drinking, etc. Anyway, it's getting technical. We'll be back after the break to look at it, inshallah.